I fell in love with a girl called Amanda, but don't have the guts to ask her out. So I went to see a native doctor popularly called Baba. All he demanded from me was 1 month internet data subscription money, which I paid, and he gave me a ring called Touch and Follow. He said, all I need to do is touch her with this ring and she will follow. I was excited because that was pretty easy. The next day, when she was passing, I created a scene just to draw her attention and touched her like it was a mistake. I was expecting her to follow me, but she didn't. Rather, she moved on and was pressing her phone. I was disappointed and went home. On getting home, I checked my phone and saw 9 notifications showing Amanda Paul is now following me on Twitter, Instagram, Keek, Badoo, Viber. Sent me a friend request on Facebook and sent me a message on WhatsApp, and 2 go. I called Baba immediately to inform him, and he replied to me, "My son, we've upgraded. Everything is now digital. Bye to the rural village. Welcome to the global village." That was why I did not ask for a cock, the brain of a mosquito, a vulture's eye, and groundnut oil, but 1 month of internet data to keep me online. I was in the church when the pastor said tomorrow night is a night of fruits, and that everyone should come with any fruits. I thought they were going to eat the fruits, so I bought apples. The next day, everybody was present with different fruits. The pastor started praying, then pointed at a woman far behind him. He said, "Pastor, woman, what type of fruit do you bring?" Woman, watermelon. Pastor, is it slice or full watermelon? Woman, full watermelon. Pastor, okay, woman, turn left and hit the watermelon on the head of the person beside you. The woman did as instructed, and then the pastor asked if the person shouted after hitting him, her. She said yes. Then he said, "That is how your enemies will shout and die." The woman shouted, "Amen." Moment later, the pastor pointed at a guy beside me before the pastor could say a word. I have run and left the church because I was sitting beside a guy with a coconut. I cannot come and kill myself. I went to church today in response to the news I heard. Today was our church member's child dedication. And you know what that means? Excess rice, drinks, and other kinds of food. I went with my spoon and a polythene bag. Unfortunately, I heard the celebration was canceled. OMG! I couldn't hold back my tears. All hope was lost, while hunger kept doing his work to the best he could. I was just sleeping when I heard "stand" in the other realm. Immediately I stood. As I woke, I saw the congregations clapping and roaring, "God bless you." I was confused as I sat down. I asked my seat neighbor, and he said, "The pastor asked who is going to send the 3 orphans in this church abroad and also support their families with 10 million each." I was shocked. I started explaining to him that I was sleeping, that I wasn't aware, before he said, "That's your business too." He even said that the person that'll promise and fail. The class of 1950 gets together for their class reunion. Not many people are left, but 2 of the 10 people to attend were Harry, an 88-year-old widower, and Esther, an 87-year-old divorcee. Over the course of the evening, they had a great time chatting about old times in their families. They each felt a real connection, and by the time the night was out, Harry had proposed, and Esther had happily accepted. The next morning, Harry woke up and was frustrated to realize that he couldn't remember Esther's answer to his proposal. Embarrassed, he picks up the phone to call her. "Hello, Esther. I'm so sorry, but my memory isn't what it used to be. Last night, when I asked you to marry me, did you say yes or no?" "I said yes," Esther exclaimed excitedly. "And I'm so glad that you called because for the life of me, I couldn't remember who asked." Several years ago, Andy was sentenced to prison. During his stay, he got along well with the guards and all his fellow inmates. The warden knew that deep down, Andy was a good person. So the warden made arrangements for the inmate to learn a trade while doing his time. Some 3 years later, Andy was recognized as one of the best carpenters in the local area. Often, he would be given a weekend pass to do odd jobs for citizens in the community, and he always reported back to prison by early Sunday evening. Andy was a model inmate. Then one day, the warden considered remodeling his kitchen, but he lacked the skills to build a set of kitchen cupboards and a large countertop. So he called Andy into his office and asked him if he could do the job. To the warden's surprise, Andy simply refused to help. "But you're an expert, Andy, and I really need your help," said the warden. Gosh, Warden, I'd really like to help you. But counterfeiting is what got me into prison in the first place. A 15-year-old boy got a Saturday job in the village shop that sold everything. The boy started, and after a while, a customer came in and went to the counter and asked for some grass seed. The boy said, "That's £2.50, please." At this point, the owner came in and took over and said to the customer, "And here's your lawnmower. So that's £57.50, please." The customer said, "No, I want only grass seed." "Thank you," the owner said. "When your grass seed has grown, you will need to mow your lawn." What a good idea, I never thought of that. And with that, the customer paid £57.50. The shop owner looks at the boy and said, "Now that's how you sell." So the boy was left on his own and was doing okay, but after a couple of hours, a chap came in looking all sheepish and put a packet of tampons on the counter. The boy did a little smirk and said, "That's £1.50, please, and here's your lawnmower, which is £55, so that will be £56.50, please." The chap asked, "Why do I need a lawnmower?" The boy replied, "Well, if your wife needs them, then that's your weekend fact." A man sees a sign outside a house, "Talking dog for sale." He rings the bell. The owner appears and tells him the dog can be viewed in the back garden. The man sees a very nice-looking black Labrador retriever sitting there. "Do you really talk?" he asks the dog. "Yes," the Labrador replies. After recovering from the shock of hearing the dog talk, the man asks, "So, tell me your story." The Labrador looks up and says, "Well, I discovered that I could talk when I was pretty young. I wanted to help the government, so I told the SAS. In no time at all, they had me jetting from country to country, sitting in rooms with spies and world leaders, because no one imagined that a dog would be eavesdropping. I was one of their most valuable spies for 8 years, but the jetting around really tired me out, and I knew I wasn't getting any younger, so I decided to settle down. I signed up for a job at Heathrow to do some undercover security work, wandering near suspicious characters and listening in. I uncovered some incredible dealings and was awarded several medals. I got married, had a few puppies, and now I've just retired." The man is amazed. He goes back into the house and asks the owner how much he wants for the dog. £10, the owner says. £10? But this dog is absolutely amazing. Why on earth are you selling him so cheaply? Because he's a lying bastard. He's never been out of the garden. An old woman walked up and tied her old mule to the hitching post. As she stood there, brushing some of the dust from her face and clothes, a young gunslinger stepped out of the saloon with a gun in one hand and a bottle of whiskey in the other. The young gunslinger looked at the old woman and laughed. "Hey, old woman, have you ever danced?" The old woman looked up at the gunslinger and said, "No, I never did dance. Never really wanted to." A crowd had gathered as the gunslinger grinned and said, "Well, you old bag, you're going to dance now," and started shooting at the old woman's feet. The old woman prospector, not wanting to get her toe blown off, started hopping around. Everybody was laughing. When his last bullet had been fired, the young gunslinger, still laughing, holstered his gun and turned around to go back into the saloon. The old woman turned to her pack mule, pulled out a double-barreled shotgun, and cocked both hammers. The loud clicks carried clearly through the desert air, and the crowd stopped laughing immediately. The young gunslinger heard the sounds too, and he turned around very slowly. The silence was almost deafening. The crowd watched as the young gunman stared at the old woman and the large gaping holes of those twin barrels. The barrels of the shotgun never wavered in the old woman's hands as she quietly said, "Son, have you ever kissed a mule's ass?" The gunslinger swallowed hard and said, "No, Massachusetts am, but I've always wanted to." Anyone who has ever dressed a child will love this one. Did you hear about the preschool teacher who was helping one of the children put on his boots? He asked for help and she could see why. Even with her pulling and him pushing, the little boots still didn't want to go on. By the time they got the second boot on, she had worked up a sweat. She almost cried when the little boy said, "Miss, they're on the wrong feet." She looked, and sure enough, they were. It wasn't any easier pulling the boots off than it was putting them on. She managed to keep her cool as together they worked to get the boots back on. this time on the right feet. He then announced, "These aren't my boots." She bit her tongue rather than get right in his face and scream, "Why didn't you say so like she wanted to?" Once again, she struggled to help him pull the ill-fitting boots off his little feet. No sooner had they gotten the boots off when he said, "They're my brother's boots. My mom made me wear them." Now she didn't know if she should laugh or cry, but she mustered up what grace and courage she had left to wrestle the boots on his feet again. Helping him into his coat, she asked, "Now, where are your gloves?" He said, "I stuffed them into the toes of my boots." A couple went on vacation to a fishing resort up north. The husband liked to fish at the crack of dawn. The wife preferred to read. One morning, the husband returned after several hours of fishing and decided to take a short nap. The wife decided to take the boat out. She was not familiar with the lake, so she rowed out, anchored the boat, and started reading her book. Along comes the game warden in his boat, pulls up alongside and says, "Good morning, ma'am. What are you doing?" "Reading my book," she replies as she thinks to herself, "Is this guy blind or what?" "You're in a restricted fishing area," he informs her. "But officer, I'm not fishing. Can't you see that?" "But you have all this equipment, ma'am. I'll have to take you in and write you up." "If you do that, I will charge you with rape," snaps the irate woman. "I didn't even touch you," grouses the game warden. "Yes, that's true, but you have all the equipment." A man walked into a pub, and the bartender asked him what he would like. The man said he would like a pint of bitter. The bartender gave the pint of bitter and said, £2 50 please, the man. Then said, "You asked me what I would like and where I come from. If someone asks you, what would you like? We don't charge them." The bartender said, "We do in here." Another man standing by the bar said, "He is right. Yeah, you did ask him what he would like, so the bartender said to the man, 'Drink up and never come in this pub again.'" Next night, the man walked in the pub again. The bartender saw him and said, "I told you yesterday to never come in here again." The man said, "I have never been in this pub before." The bartender said, "You have." The man said, "I haven't. The bartender said you were in here yesterday." "No, I wasn't," said the man. "Well, if you weren't, you must have a double." The man said, "Whiskey, please." A lady goes to her priest one day and tells him, "Father, I have a problem. I have 2 female parrots, but they only know to say one thing." "What do they say?" the priest asked. "They say, 'Hi, we're hookers. Do you want to have some fun?' That's obscene," the priest exclaimed. Then he thought for a moment. "You know," he said, "I may have a solution to your problem. I have 2 male talking parrots, which I have taught to pray and read the Bible. Bring your 2 parrots over to my house, and we'll put them in the cage with Francis and Peter. My parrots can teach your parrots to pray and worship, and your parrots are sure to stop saying that phrase in no time." "Thank you," the woman responded. "This may very well be the solution." The next day, she brought her female parrots to the priest's house. As he ushered her in, she saw that his 2 male parrots were inside their cage holding rosary beads and praying. Impressed, she walked over and placed her parrots in with them. After a few minutes, the female parrots cried out in unison, "Hi, we're hookers! Do you want to have some fun?" There was stunned silence. One male parrot looked over at the other male parrot and says, "Put the beads away, Frank. Our prayers have been answered." A doctor was having an affair with his nurse. Shortly afterward, she told him she was pregnant. Not wanting his wife to know, he gave the nurse a sum of money and asked her to go to Italy and have the baby there. "But how will I let you know the baby is born?" she asked. He replied, "Just send me a postcard and write spaghetti on the back. I'll take care of expenses." Not knowing what else to do, the nurse took the money and flew to Italy. 6 months went by, and then one day the doctor's wife called him at the office and said, "Dear, you received a very strange postcard in the mail today from Europe, and I don't understand what it means." The doctor said, "Just wait until I get home and I will explain it to you." Later that evening, the doctor came home, read the postcard, and fell to the floor with a heart attack. Paramedics rushed him to the ER. The lead medic stayed back to comfort his wife and asked what trauma had precipitated the cardiac arrest. So the wife picked up the card and read, Spaghetti, 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 spaghetti. 2 with sausage and meatballs, 2 without. The Englishman's wife steps up to the tee, and as she bends over to place her ball, a gust of wind blows her skirt up and reveals her lack of underwear. "Good God, woman, why aren't you wearing any undies?" her husband demanded. "Well, you don't give me enough housekeeping money to afford any." The Englishman immediately reaches into his pocket and says, "For the sake of decency, here's 20 pounds. Go and buy yourself some underwear." Next, the Irishman's wife bends over to set her ball on the tee. Her skirt also blows up to show that she too is wearing no undies. "Blessed Virgin Mary, woman, you've no undies. Why not?" She replies, "I can't afford any on the money you give me." He reaches into his pocket and says, "For the sake of decency, here's 10 pounds. Go and buy yourself some underwear." Lastly, the Scotsman's wife bends over. The wind also takes her skirt over her head to reveal that she too is naked under it. "Sweet mother of Jesus, Aggie, where are your drawers?" She too explains. "You didn't give me enough money to be able to afford any." The Scotsman reaches into his pocket and says, "Well, for the love of Jesus, here's a comb. Tidy yourself up a bit." Reuben and Esther have been engaged for 6 years. Reuben's father takes him aside one day and says, "You have been engaged for so long, I would like some grandchildren. When are you going to marry Esther?" "Father, I would not be able to marry Esther till I can see what she looks like." "What do you mean? You know what she looks like. You see her every day. I mean all of her. Oy vey, that will be impossible." But in the end, the two families arrive at a compromise. They decide that Esther will undress in her bedroom with both families, and Reuben outside on the landing. When the signal is given, Reuben will be allowed to peek through the keyhole so he can see Esther in the altogether. Come the day, Esther's mother is looking through the keyhole and tells Reuben that Esther is ready. Reuben kneels down and peers through the keyhole. After 5 minutes, Reuben's father says, "Well, are you satisfied now?" Reuben stands up and says, "I'm sorry, but I'm afraid I won't be able to marry Esther." Both families in unison say, "Why? What is wrong with Esther?" "I don't like her nose." A group of men live and die for their Saturday morning golf game. One transfers to another city and they're lost without him. A new woman joins their club. When she hears the guys talking about their golf round, she says, "I played on my college's golf team. I was pretty good. Mind if I join you next week?" No one wants to say yes, but they're on the spot. Finally, one man says, "Okay, but we start at 6:30 a.m. He figures the early tea time will discourage her. The woman says this may be a problem and asks if she can be up to 15 minutes late. They roll their eyes but say, "Okay." She's there at 6:30 a.m. sharp and beats all of them with an eye-opening 2 under par round. She's fun and pleasant and the guys are impressed. They congratulate her and invite her back the next week. She smiles and says, "I'll be there at 6:30 or 6:45. The next week, she again shows up at 6:30 sharp. Only this time, she plays left-handed. The 3 guys are incredulous as she still beats them with an even par round, despite playing with her offhand. They're totally amazed. They can't figure her out. She's very pleasant and a gracious winner. They invite her back again, but each man harbors a burning desire to beat her. The 3rd week, she's 15 minutes late, which irritates the guys. This week, she plays right-handed and narrowly beats all 3 of them. The men grumble that her late arrival is petty gamesmanship on her part. However, she's so charming and complimentary of their strong play, they can't hold a grudge. This woman is a riddle no one can figure out. They have a couple of beers in the clubhouse, and finally, one of the men asks her, "How do you decide if are you going to golf right-handed or left-handed?" The lady blushes and grins. "When my dad taught me to play golf, I learned I was ambidextrous," she replies. "I like to switch back and forth. When I got married after college, I discovered my husband always sleeps in the nude. From then on, I developed a silly habit. Right before I leave in the morning for golf practice, I pull the covers off him. If his willy points to the right, I golf right-handed. If it points to the left, I golf left-handed." The guys think this is hysterical. Astonished at this bizarre information, one of the guys says, "What if it's pointing straight up?" She says, "Then I'm 15 minutes late." We live in a tower block and occasionally have new people move in and out. Yesterday, we encountered a new resident, a short red-haired lady who, through dwarfism and food, managed to appear to be about as wide as she is tall. My boyfriend greeted her with a simple, "Hello." He also tried to say welcome, but she cut him off with, "Shut up, I don't know you." "Okay, not the sociable type, neither are we. Best not get friendly then." Today, when returning from grocery shopping, we found her trying to pick the lock with what looked like a piece of a paperclip, because that's going to work. She's apparently been at it a while because before we could open the door with our key, a police car stopped and the officer called out to her. The officer asked her why she was breaking in, to which she responded she lived here. She turned to us and said, "They know me." My boyfriend smiled and said, "I don't know you." We entered the building after the officer asked us to confirm, and my boyfriend repeated, "We don't know her. Can't wait to have more contact with her." While riding my motorbike yesterday, I swerved to avoid hitting a cat, lost control, and landed in a ditch, severely banging my head. Dazed and confused, I crawled out of the ditch to the edge of the road when a shiny new convertible pulled up with a very beautiful woman who asked, "Are you okay?" As I looked up, I noticed she was wearing a low-cut blouse with cleavage to die for. "I'm okay, I think," I replied as I pulled myself up to the side of the car to get a closer look. She said, "Get in and I'll take you home so I can clean and bandage that nasty scrape on your head." "That's nice of you," I answered, "but I don't think my wife will like me doing that." "Oh, come now, I'm a nurse," she insisted. "I need to see if you have any more scrapes and then treat them properly." Well, she was really pretty and very persuasive. Being sort of shaken and weak, I agreed, but repeated, "I'm sure my wife won't like this." We arrived at her place, which was just a few kilometers away, and after a couple of cold beers and the bandaging, I thanked her and said, "I feel a lot better, but I know my wife is going to be really upset, so I'd better go now." "Don't be silly," she said with a smile while unbuttoning her blouse, exposing the most beautiful set of boobs I've ever seen. "Stay for a while. She won't know anything. By the way, where is she? Still in the ditch with my bike, I guess." A man playing on a new golf course got confused as to what hole he was on. He saw a lady playing ahead of him. He walked up to her and asked if she knew what hole he was playing. She replied, "I'm on the 7th hole, and you're a hole behind me, so you must be on the 6th hole." He thanked her and went back to his golf. On the back 9, the same thing happened, and he approached the lady again with the same request. She said, "I'm on the 14th. You are a hole behind me, so you must be on the 13th. Once again, he thanked her. He finished his round and went into the clubhouse and saw the lady sitting at the end of the bar. He went up to her and said, "Let me buy you a drink to show my appreciation for your help." He started a conversation and asked her what kind of work she did. She said she was in sales, and he said he was in sales also. He asked what she sold. She replied, "If I told you, you would only laugh." "No, I wouldn't," he said. She said, "I sell tampons." With that, he fell on the floor, laughing so hard. She said, "See, I knew you would laugh." "That's not what I'm laughing at," he replied. "I'm a toilet paper salesman, so I'm still one hole behind you." 3 doctors with a growing private practice decide to hire a new nurse onto their staff to meet their needs. They hire a very qualified applicant named Beth and meet after a week to discuss the new nurse's abilities in her new role. The first doctor says, "Well, she does a really good job with the patients, but I'm concerned Beth is mixing things up a bit. I told her that her shift was from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., and she showed up at 5 a.m. the next day." The second doctor chimes in, "I've had some similar issues. I told Beth to tell the patient they needed to take 1 antibiotic every 6 hours, and she told them they needed to take 6 every hour." The third doctor looked shocked. "I have had absolutely no issues so far." Suddenly, the 3 doctors hear a blood-curdling scream coming from the next room. "Oh," says the third doctor, "I see what you mean. I just asked Beth to prick the boil on the patient in the next room." An 84-year-old man is having a drink at a bar. Suddenly, a gorgeous girl enters and sits down a few seats away. The girl is so attractive that he just can't take his eyes off her. After a short while, the girl notices him staring and approaches him. Before the man has time to apologize, the girl looks him deep in the eyes and says to him in a sultry tone, "I'll do anything you'd like. Anything you can imagine in your wildest dreams. It doesn't matter how extreme or unusual it is. I'm game. I want 100 pounds, and there's another condition." Completely stunned by the sudden turn of events, the man asks her what her condition is. "You have to tell me what you want me to do in just 3 words. The man takes a moment to consider the offer from the beautiful woman. He whips out his wallet and puts 100 pounds into her hand. He then looks her square in the eyes and says slowly and clearly, "Paint my house." Our needs change as we get older, and we tend to look for bargains. Gladys is the preacher's wife and accompanies her husband to church each Sunday, always sitting in the front pew, supporting him as he delivers his sermon. She takes pride in being part of the congregation and loves engaging with the church community. One particular Sunday, the preacher is especially passionate, and his sermon stretches on longer than usual. The topic is profound, but the congregation, perhaps tired from a long week, starts to struggle with staying alert. Slowly but surely, heads begin to nod and eyes begin to close. By the time the sermon finally concludes, many in the congregation have succumbed to sleep. After the service, always sociable and eager to connect, Gladys decides to mingle with the congregation. She notices one gentleman who looks particularly groggy, his eyes barely open and a sleepy expression on his face. Determined to be friendly and perhaps wake him up a bit, she walks over to him with a warm smile. Extending her hand in greeting, she says cheerfully, "Hello, I'm Gladys Dunn." The gentleman, still in a bit of a daze and rubbing his eyes, looks up at her and replies with a weary smile, "You're not the only one." A man gets home early from work and catches his wife in bed with another man. The husband challenges the other man to an old-fashioned duel with his handguns. Whoever manages to shoot first and kill the other gets his wife. The other man agrees, so they go into another room so the wife doesn't have to see it. Once in the other room, the husband turns to the other man and says, "Why should either of us have to die? We will both fire a shot into the air and lay on the ground as if we're dead. When she comes in, she will see our lifeless bodies and rush to one of us. Whoever she chooses can have her." The other man agrees again, so they fire into the air and collapse. The wife throws the door open and peers down at the two men, then backs out of the room and calls out, "Darling, you can come out. They're both dead." A man and his wife were spending the day at the zoo. She was wearing a loose-fitting, sleeveless pink dress with straps. He was wearing his usual jeans and t-shirt. As they walked through the ape exhibit, they passed in front of a large silverback gorilla. Noticing the wife, the gorilla went crazy. He jumped on the bars and, holding on with one hand and 2 feet, he grunted and pounded his chest with his free hand. He was obviously excited at the pretty lady in the pink dress. The husband, noticing the excitement, thought this was funny. He suggested, "Now maybe pucker your lips and wiggle your bottom. See what that does." She played along and the gorilla got even more excited, making noises that would wake the dead. The husband then suggested she let one of her straps fall to show a little more skin. She did, and the gorilla was about to tear the bars down. "Now, show your thighs and sort of fan your dress at him," he said. This drove the gorilla absolutely crazy, and he started doing flips. The husband smiled sweetly at his wife as he opened the cage door and shoved her in. "Now tell him you have a headache." A farmer ordered a high-tech milking machine. Since the equipment arrived when his wife was out of town, he decided to test it on himself first. So he inserted his manhood into the equipment, turned on the switch, and everything else was automatic. Soon he realized that the equipment provided him with much more pleasure than his wife did. When the fun was over, though, he quickly realized that he couldn't remove the instrument from his member. He read the manual, but didn't find any useful information on how to disengage himself. He tried every button on the instrument, but still without success. Finally, he decided to call the supplier's customer service hotline with his mobile phone. Thank God for mobile phones. "Hello, I just bought a milking machine from your company. It works fantastic, but how do I remove it from the cow's udder? Don't worry, replied the customer service rep. The machine will release automatically once it's collected 2 gallons. Have a nice day.